welcome to the lockdown sessions and our second episode of 450 that we've got planned.
There's a lot to talk about, Brad.
I learned last time not to ask you how you are. What have you been learning over the last week? Shall I dive straight in?
You can go for it. What have I been learning over the last week? Managing this still.
That's going to be great for all of our audio listeners.
Audio. Managing, pointing at her head. Mindset. What's going on inside my head? What are the stories that I'm telling myself about the future? And really getting into the practice of bringing myself back into the present moment. And I know we were touching on the mindfulness in our last podcast, but I can only see the coming months, getting more and more busy in people's minds. And for me, that's just crucial, for me.
It's a really big one, isn't it? Because even as you say it, what comes into my head is the narrative people have been telling themselves for the last few months, fueled by whatever their governments have been saying in whichever country they're in, has created a whole story of what life is like outside of our own villages, towns and homes.
Yeah.
And I marvel, I drove down to London last week to see my parents, and there weren't many people wearing masks, and the traffic was full, and there were people standing, distance, but standing outside, queuing outside shops. Yeah. Life was going on, and there seems a core group of society that's just really happy to just get on with it. But I think there's a much bigger part of society that's become a little bit institutionalized. And when you talk about sort of getting that clarity in your head, where do you start with that? Because that's so much noise that's going on. I mean, how have you done it? You've gone back into a workplace.
Yeah.
How have you cleared the clutter to make you not just able to go in, but to be able to go in and still perform, right? You've got to do a job. You can't be sat there worrying.
Yeah. I had a number of emails sent over the weekend, and I might add that I should know better.
Right.
So I had a number of emails sent over the weekend, and I chose to go in and check work emails at a late time on a Friday night, and this is one of the things that we talk to our coachees about, and on our wellbeing and resilience courses, that we take responsibility and we manage these things. And, I found this curiosity, I'll just check my email, and then I struggled to get to sleep that night. So the first thing for me over that weekend was really increasing my awareness about the stories that I was telling myself. So, one of the common things I'll ask myself is, is that true? And the likelihood is 80% of the time of what I'm telling myself is it's not true.
Right.
I'm really creating some fictional, world that isn't really based on anything other than a fear and a worry and an anxiety of what I don't want to happen and what my worst case scenario is. So, trying to get myself back into the present moment and focus on doing things that I enjoyed over the weekend was really important for me to get a little bit of a reality check on things as well, because it can become all encompassing and then it takes over your life. But the other was for me to think about what are all the things that I'm looking forward to about going back into that environment, albeit, you know, that's my, you know, I'm part-time there. What are all the things that I am looking forward to, which are seeing other members of the team, being able to see all of the guests that come to the, you know, for chiropractic care, and catch up with people that I've not seen, be around people. I am a people person, so, you know, and being in that same physical space with them, because as we've mentioned before, Zoom is fantastic, and whichever platform that you're using, but being in a physical presence with somebody for me is really important. And not trying to be a perfectionist. I think, you know, having these unrealistically high expectations of oneself and of other people. So we're kind of setting ourselves up to fail, and we're setting others up to fail, which doesn't sound like a great working environment.
Well, I know from my own experience that I gave up on perfectionism probably as a younger guy, and realized that if I strove for excellence, it was far easier for me than to strive for perfection, which never enabled me to be pleased.
No.
But I just wonder when you say that, and you know, we're going for a dog walk next week for the first time in like 4.5 months.
Yeah.
I'm a huggy kind of person. When I see even my clients, I hug them. I've worked with them for a long time. In my head, the story I'm telling myself that I'm playing out is, you know, when I see them, it's that kind of, how am I not going to just go and give them a hug, right? I mean, even seeing my parents and my family, we had an anniversary celebration, 57 years my parents have been married.
Oh,
I know, right? And so we all went, and the weather was awful at the weekend. So we went to their garage underneath their apartments, and my mum had like laid it out in the middle of the garage, you know, little chairs for us and little hampers for all of us. And there were 8 of us, and you know, nobody hugged anybody. It felt so weird, so strange. And I think that also fuels, because people need to learn almost how to be when we come back. So I know that's a story I tell myself. How am I going to be? I become a little almost self-conscious.
Yeah.
You know, and I think learning to control that on top of what you're saying, which is this, you know, have your expectations set, I think is really key. But something else you said that triggers another question I'd love to know more about. You talk about you're a people person. So obviously you've been without people. And last time we talked about the fact that actually that was fine. You were quite enjoying the solace, the time to reflect. What's it like now with all the noise around with people? Do you notice a difference?
You know what I've noticed? I'm exhausted.
Right.
So I've always thought that on the whole, I get my, you know, if we're looking at it, introversion, extroversion, I'm a kind of on the cusp, I think, and I get a lot of energy from being around people. But this week I have noticed that whilst I have it, you know, really enjoyed it at the time, it seemed to have really taken it out of me, you know, when I move away from that environment, to the point where, you know, on Tuesday, I think it was, I was just on the sofa, and I was just thinking, I can't, I don't want to, I can't really do anything. And I thought, am I coming down with something? Because this isn't like me. But I guess recognizing that with any change, it has an impact on us, doesn't it? Whether that's mentally, emotionally, physically. And although for me, this feels like quite a subtle change, my body thinks differently, you know, and kind of coming back to this kindness, the self-compassion piece, one, I think it's really important for individuals to recognize that when they're going through this next stage of change, whatever that looks like for them, to recognize and remind themselves that we're not machines. So something I was speaking about, I wrote a blog post actually, and around the shoulds. So this is where the shoulds can creep in. I should be able to manage this. I shouldn't need to ask for help. I should be able to do my working day plus all of the other things that I was doing before. But that, again, is setting ourselves up to fail and to feel bad about ourselves. So I think that being compassionate with ourselves, but also recognizing that just because I'm having this experience and we're moving into the 4th month of this, life, that doesn't mean other people are having that same experience.
Right.
And I think that, moving on to look at from an employee perspective, but also from the employer, the manager, the leader, we really need to be mindful that still people are going to be experiencing this in a very different way.
I wonder whether it may take as long as we've been in this way, twice as long to really come back out, because everyone will come at their own pace. You talked about the change curve last time and how people move through it. And I imagine that some people are still even in the denial phase of this recovery of having to go back to work.
Yeah.
And you can see that even by the UK government's actions in the last 24 hours in trying to boost people to come back out. They're giving away £10 vouchers, to make us go to the pub and have dinner, because they just want us to go out and, give us a good bribe, to go out and eat somewhere. And I'm positive not everyone will take it up.
Yeah.
So you've got some people who are at denial, you've got others who are already, integrated it straight back in. Yes, at last we can go out. I was chatting with our friend William this morning and saying, are you going away this summer? And he said, you know what, Brad, I don't really want to go to a beach in the UK with thousands of people paying through the roof to be with thousands of people when I don't want to be indoors anywhere. It's like, actually, I hear that and I think, I'll raise that. I think it will be quite a long time before a high level number of people want to be doing that. So I'm wondering, for all these businesses, for leaders, let's say, who we work with, there's a real responsibility on leaders to create the space for their team members to talk about this stuff. Because if you don't talk it out, you act it out.
Yeah.
How do you see the leadership role changing now that we're kind of taking those first little baby steps back in, from how the leaders in the clinic have been working to how you see it, say, from an executive coach's perspective?
For me, it reinforces what I've always believed about leadership, I think, which is that building trust, treating people as individuals, looking.
Hi, Felix.
Hi, Felix. Quiet now. Sorry about that. Kind of having this two-way communication and encouraging people to be open and honest in their communication helps engagement, helps motivation. So that side of things is something that I've always believed in. But I think this safety element, and we spoke about the psychological needs and satisfying those for employees, for individuals, be that with the culture or around kind of recognizing and acknowledging people for their efforts. And that's that is really important. But as you say, it's tuning in and really listening to and encouraging people to talk about what are they fearful of, what are they uncertain of, what's going on for them in their world, which is not just about work. It's about more than that. Because if people feel cared for, if individuals feel cared for, then they are going to, it sounds a bit crass, but they're going to perform better. And therefore the business, it's going to be better for the business. So if you're not a people-centered leader, if you're not a compassionate leader, and it is more about the numbers and and more about the task side of it, by really taking time out and focusing more on the people, you're still going to get the business outcome and the numbers. But I just think within this climate, if we don't do that as leaders, then we are definitely going to see an increase in the levels of sickness, along the commitment and the loyalty, which is going to impact the business.
I think that's really true. I think that's really true. Even my friend in Ibiza, who works for a high-end restaurant, they treated their staff really badly when this all kicked off. So no pay, stood everyone down, reduced the workforce by 50%, told the other 50%, hang around the island, and if we get to open, you'll have a job, maybe, possibly. And my friend was chatting to me the other day and said, look, we're opening, we're the only restaurant on the island opening. We've got 300 covers we can do a night with 25% of the staff that used to work here, not 50%, because not everyone could stay.
Yeah.
And they spent 3.5 months with no income. And his view is, this is the last year I'm working for them. I need the job this year.
Yeah.
But do you know what? I don't want to work for people who treat me like that.
Mm.
No one's been asked, are they safe? That yes, they have to wear masks, but this is an environment where it's an experiential evening. So you go along, I've visited the restaurant, you go along and you're led to your table by two waiters who then, when they sit you down, bend down behind you and sing the menu into your ear very quietly. And at the end, produce a cocktail on the house. Don't worry, you pay for it in other ways.
Yeah.
It's just astonishing. You've got this, it's open on the marina. They're selling bottles of champagne for 10,000 euros here. And when someone buys a bottle of champagne, it gets delivered by a speedboat, into the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
So it's complete experience.
Mm.
And he's thinking, all I care about is how you treated me.
Yeah.
Full stop, end of story. And that's all the staff are talking about.
Mm.
How could they treat us so badly? And I think it's going to call out a lot of companies on their values.
Yes.
We hear fairness, integrity, trust, commitment. These are all words that organizations use as their core values. We run enough team sessions to know these are the discussions that teams have when they set their value charter. And I believe that this is going to call out leadership to say, do you really walk and talk your values? Because you're going to be exposed if you don't. How can we help leaders to create that space? So if you were coaching a leader today and they're saying to you, look, my team is worried, I've got individuals who are concerned, we're trying to create a new normal, the phrase that everyone's working with, how would you coach someone to open up, to get rid of this narrative that you talk about, to create safety that tackles core human psychological needs? People need inclusion, they want control. where do you start with that?
I think that there are. So sorry, we've got.
Hello, mate.
He's just gonna.
No, I had Sunny join a call this morning. I think it's absolutely appropriate for Felix to come and say hi.
Oh, good. Okay, so some organisations are fortunate to have kind of employee opinion surveys, some form of well-being, questionnaires that go out. So that helps. That can help really get a gauge of the pulse of kind of what's happening within the organisation, or within teams within the organisation, dependent on how large it is. But I mean, if you strip it right back, I would be talking to leaders about creating an authentic leadership style, culture from that. And really that comes from a willingness and an openness to be human, and to share. Now, I'm not talking about, sharing the deepest, concerns or anything like that, but to be human, as a leader, me having this might be appropriate on a group level. It might be appropriate on a one-to-one level. And it all depends on the situation. Again, what's the culture already like? Because if it's not an open culture and all of a sudden the leader starts being open and seemingly authentic, how is that going to land? And that is not going to land well at all, I would guess. So, sharing a little bit of oneself to encourage others to open up. And then that builds the connection, it builds the trust, and creates this feeling of the me too, of that common humanity. It doesn't matter, I am the leader and you are the manager, for example, but we are experiencing this together. And you matter and I matter, and we need to find a way of working through this. So it's about the we rather than the you and the I.
And if I understand you correctly, it's about me showing some vulnerability, my vulnerabilities as a leader, without feeling as though I'm exposing myself.
Yes.
And by doing so, encouraging others to share their vulnerabilities without feeling they're going to be judged.
Yes.
Because I align that kind of authenticity that you talk about with being non-judgmental. So I know that in my coaching sessions with leaders of the last few weeks, we've been talking about not judging others for their decisions.
Well, we're always going to judge, aren't we? We're always going to have that quick judgy. And I make I've made friends with my judgy self, because my judgy self will always be there.
Right.
But it's how much do we listen to our judgy self, and how much do we take on board what our judgy self is saying? This is what I believe, because we acknowledging that and going, that's my judgy self again. I don't think it's that way, is it? And just playing with it. So I have been playing with that. But you're quite right, is that to be open and to be curious, and what makes us have the right to think that what we think is is right.
Although if I've got a distortion of always being right, that's even more problematic.
Yeah, trouble. And then I would suggest get in touch with one of the coaches.
I'll call you after the session today. We'll put some time in the diary. It sounds so easy, doesn't it, when we say it like that, right? Be vulnerable, create intimacy, build trust, inclusion, the we, not the you and I. And I hear all of that. And then I think, we still have to deliver.
Yeah.
We still have to get on and do stuff. And I'm wondering, is there a gap now, a kind of an execution gap between being sensitive to how people are feeling, so that compassion, humanity, and kindness that you refer to, and being assertively driving the team to deliver? Because over the last few months, pipeline business would have been coming in, but now new business is probably struggling.
Yeah. And
unless you're in telecommunications or video conferencing, you've been probably struggling over recent months. I just wonder, is there a natural balance? You mentioned authenticity and authenticity as a leader. I've often struggled with, when I ask a leader, hey, if you were going to be more authentic tomorrow, what would you do? They often can't answer that question. Like, what would you do to be more authentic? How does one show authenticity and not come across as disingenuine?
For me, this goes back to do you have a work persona and an out of work persona? You know, and there are lots of people that do. How much of yourself, how much of your true self do you allow others to see within the work environment? And there will be layers, likely. Simon Sinek talks about this as well. You know, because it's not necessarily about sharing your private self, you know, but actually your personality and who you are. And perhaps people struggle with that question, and I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. Because maybe they don't believe that is what is required to be an effective leader. You know, maybe they've got to where they've got to, where they've not needed to reveal too much, and
right.
You know, and you know, let's face it, it depends on who our stakeholders are. We have to be a little bit chameleon-like and kind of adapt and change dependent on who it is we're communicating with and what our overarching aim is and the outcome that we want to achieve. So maybe there are some individuals, some leaders who have done that so much that actually when we ask, you know, who is your authentic self, they don't know.
No, and actually often our authentic self comes out under pressure. And I know from speaking to a client just the other week, senior leader of a region, a humanistic, compassionate leader, but whose boss is a self-serving alpha misogynist.
Mm-hmm.
And without even talking to his chief in situ, he sends an email out to the region saying that everyone is expected back in the office on Monday.
Wow.
And this guy brings this email, shares it on the screen in our session, and says, Brad, what am I meant to do with that? Because that's him being authentic. And I'm of the opinion that we should be talking to our people, having roundtable discussions and seeing who wants to come in, who's happy to come in, how often are they happy to come in, do we need to send them some virtual sort of recordings of the office and what we've done to try and cater for, you know, the distancing. Everyone's expected back in the office. Come on, business as usual. And that's his authentic self, with no desire to change this individual. And I think it's really hard because that balance between results, relationships, and process becomes more and more evident, I think, the longer we stay in this period.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there will be a harder challenge for leaders in the coming years, not just because our economy has shrunk by 25% and people want to grow it, but because people aren't safe. And unless we're able to show that vulnerability, that compassion, that kindness. So you made me think before when you were talking about being human, and I was thinking how to lead from a humanity point of view, to lead from the heart, engenders loyalty and commitment. Now, even when I say it out loud, that sounds true. But people are under pressure. And I wonder how, when they're under pressure, do they adopt a behavior that maybe isn't their usual behavior? So if I've got my judgy self or my impatient self, because I'm not just judgmental, I'm impatient as well, and I can be intolerant, and I'm editing what I'm about to say because people listen to this and obviously engage us as coaches. But here we are, and we're paid actually to help and enable others, and yet we can both sit here and say we have those narratives going on in our head that completely block and get in the way and require effort to move ourselves from. I'm wondering, what about those people who don't have the skills, who don't have the techniques, who don't know how to non-identify with a narrative? And maybe is it that RAIN technique, that we talk about in some of our sessions, that maybe people should be adopting, that really could help them start this process of leading with kindness?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, just there, Brad, in terms of those individuals, what I believe is that leaders need to be equipping managers, and although it could be some of the managers that are lacking this awareness, so that we'll come on to that in a moment, but we need to be equipping managers with the tools, with the training to be able to help have these conversations, to be able to deliver feedback in a non-threatening way, a two-way conversation, so that and in terms of coaching, they should be able to be helping their individuals through coaching to show that they care, and to get the best from those individuals. But for those that kind of are not knowing where to start, as you said, so the RAIN, like many of the mindfulness techniques that we often talk about, it's about that acknowledgement, it's about the recognition. So with the RAIN, it was the recognizing how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what's going on for me at the moment. And rather than resisting against it, that A is about the allow. So allow yourself to be. And yet it's going to be a lot easier to be practicing this technique when we're not in the midst of a meeting, because it's very hard to allow how we're feeling when we've got the narrative running through our head about what other people are perceiving and thinking about my behavior.
Yeah, right.
So choosing when we're going to practice this is going to be really key. So once we've allowed, and it sounds so easy, doesn't it? Just allow it.
just accept it. It is what it is.
Yeah. Then it's about that getting curious and investigating. So that I, as the investigate into what's going on, what's going on for me right now. Why am I feeling this tension? It could be the frustration. It could be that I'm irritated. I was irritated by what Brad said to me then, and I'm not sure what that's all about. But by allowing myself space to investigate into that on my own, then I will likely be able to uncover some of those answers. And then the final part, the N, is non-identification. And actually, this is a stage where you don't have to do anything. It's similar to the allowing, but it's the having that natural awareness of that's what's gone on for me, that's what my experience has been. So really that's a technique about raising that awareness, and the more we can practice that, then the more natural and the more into the subconscious that's going to go for us. But that will really help to raise raise our levels of awareness about kind of how we're experiencing things at the moment, and therefore the impact we could be having on others.
Right, because I think that's the important bit, because for me, even when you walk through it, so I have to recognize how I'm feeling, I have to allow myself to feel it, I have to investigate why and how and where I'm feeling it, and then I have to make sure I don't identify with it, so I don't collapse into it and kind of, spiral into some new narrative of how I'm coming across and what people are thinking. Yeah. And that acronym of RAIN, I know I find useful, but even when you walk through it like that, it tells me that people need to practice this probably as soon after the moment, because in that moment, they might just have to recognize what's going on.
Yeah.
Because when you say, oh, I'm not sure, what Brad said just irritated me there, that could be something that you have to get used to every day. And actually learning how to recognize things and not react to them.
Yeah.
I think is for me, like the bit that's the training bit, how I train myself in. It's not just the process of recognize, allow, investigate, and then non-identify. It's about recognize and don't react to it. Accept, allow, don't react to it. Investigate, don't react to it. Non-identification, which is like the physical manifestation of non-identifying. And it's this constant drive to not react. And of course, when we're under pressure, we're more at risk of reacting to things than my favorite phrase of rather than responding to it. Do you feel as though enough people are equipped with this, or do you think that leaders should be, as a starting point, almost sharing these concepts with people and saying, look, this is how we're going to feel whenever we do? It's almost as if, there's a LinkedIn post for you right there, right? Get RAIN out there for people.
I don't think that enough. No, I don't think there are enough leaders doing it. I don't think there are enough managers doing it, or individuals, wherever you are within an organization. But it's the leaders, those that have teams reporting into them, and those that are shaping the vision and are role modeling, that there's a huge opportunity to be feeding more and more and more of this into the business, and this is just one of hundreds of different techniques in the mindfulness arena, positive psychology, arena, and it's proven to increase, the feelings of well-being, confidence, self-esteem. So, and help people to manage the stress and the anxiety and the worry.
And I know that to be true because just last week, I met one of my psychotherapy patients. We went for a session as a walk. They're a young person, so they're a teenager. I met them at the park, took the dog, we went for a walk for an hour, did our session walking. Yeah. And I shared the RAIN technique with them because they were telling themselves stories that weren't facts, getting quite worried. And when I spoke to their mother a few days later to see how they were doing, she told me that he shared the technique with her and her partner that night.
Yeah.
Very excited to tell them about the RAIN technique and how this was going to help him, and has messaged me twice since last Monday with when he's used it.
Brilliant.
So this is a 17-year-old who's got the strangest narratives probably going on for them.
Yeah.
And I think this is really interesting because we start off with this idea of leading with compassion and being a leader and having humanity, But you've also touched on today when we started, and maybe we've kind of come full circle actually, because we started talking about ourselves as individuals going back in, you know, to that workspace. And this technique, this RAIN technique, is something that individuals can use to really help control their environment that they're living in and control those stories that come in. I think it's a fantastic well-being, mindful opportunity for people to really give the right attention to keeping control, not getting sucked in to the emotion.
And, you know, maybe there's an opportunity here as well about naming, you know, as if there is, you know, if leaders can help to create this safer space to be more open and honest. I'm not at all suggesting that there's a half an hour conversation that happens about feelings, but if we can, you know, start more openly naming the feeling and sharing when we're noticing, you know, you're seeming quite frustrated. What's going on there for you? But there seems to have been an aversion to this in the past. But these emotions and these feelings that we are all that are passing through us, they're not going to go away in any time soon. So equipping individuals to be able to more openly communicate, but also have these strategies and techniques themselves to get to a place where they are, you know, they're kind of comfortable and they're controlling themselves and their behaviors. Maybe then they will be more likely to share what's going on for them, because the responsibility isn't just on the leader, you know, to bring this out. This is all of our responsibility. Take responsibility for ourselves. And it comes back to that courage piece. You know, we have to have courage in ourselves, and we need to have trust in our colleagues, in our managers, in our leaders, as we're going back into that environment.
Yeah, you're so right, because that's the collective bit. And I know you're right, because again, we were running a session a few weeks ago, a webinar on resilience and positive psychology. And after halfway through, I did a little Jamboard session, and I opened it up, and I had a little sticker on the screen that said, what are your concerns over the next 3 months? Just adjectives. We filled this Jamboard with uncertainty, nervousness, fear, tiredness. 90% of the words were negative. Now, clearly, the question was, what are you concerned about? So they're more than likely going to be negative. But there was a core theme that people were worried about what it's going to be like. So if leaders aren't listening to that, then they're missing an opportunity to create that kind of space where people are willing to perform again. Because we can all perform at home. We've proven that. Now we need to learn how to do that back in the workplace. And what I like about what you're saying is there's a collective responsibility.
Definitely.
Part of it is on us as individuals, and part of it is on us as leaders.
Yes. Which comes back to that, you know, what you were saying, Brad, about the compassionate leadership and having compassion, yet being assertive and, you know, delivering the difficult messages, I guess. So it really is, it's that balance. You can still be a compassionate leader, and still hold others to account, and still deliver difficult feedback and have these challenging questions. It's not one or the other. I honestly believe that you can be all of these, but it takes, you know, it's going to take effort and attention and intention, as we have spoken about before.
Yeah, there's my energy levels thinking, wow, that's why people are exhausted.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think we've come full circle on that one, Laura. I love it. Should we do it again in a few weeks' time?
Let's.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much for all of your energy, and let's get people using RAIN during the summer.
Yes. Absolutely.
Since
Thanks
there's so much of it. Brilliant, Nora. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.